I never thought I'd dread visiting my partner's family, but ever since I started dating Dylan, I've been walking on eggshells around his mother, Linda. Dylan and Mav have been together for nearly 6 years, and for the most part, our relationship is stable and happy, but the tension with his mom has always been palpable. From the beginning, Linda seemed to have it out for me. She would make jokes about my upbringing. My parents are teachers, middle class, hardworking people, and apparently that was never enough. The first time I met her formally, at a dinner in her suburban Connecticut home, she complimented me on my dress, then immediately said, "You should really consider wearing something more elegant next time. People like us don't exactly mingle with, well, ordinary backgrounds." I froze. Dylan, mortified, tried to deflect, but Linda kept smiling, as if she hadn't just humiliated me in front of his entire family. At first, I tried to shrug it off. I wanted to believe she was just quirky, maybe socially awkward. I even tried engaging her in conversation, complimenting her cooking, asking about her interests. Nothing seemed to work. Over time, her concerns became increasingly controlling. She critiqued everything, from the way I cooked her son's favorite dinner to how I arranged flowers in my apartment. Dylan always defended me, but I could see the frustration in his eyes. The first major incident came during Dylan's cousin's engagement party. I wore a navy dress I'd carefully chosen, simple, elegant, not flashy. Linda cornered me near the buffet, hands on her hips, and said, "Oh, you're wearing that again? You know, women in our family know better than to repeat outfits." She laughed, loud enough for half the room to turn and look. I felt my face burn red, but I held my tongue. Dylan tried to intervene, whispering, "Ignore her," but I could tell he was torn between defending me and not wanting to make a scene. After that night, I began to notice a pattern. Every family gathering, every holiday, there was always a comment, a sly insult, or a manipulative remark aimed to make me feel small. She would text Dylan repeatedly, asking for updates about my career, my wardrobe, even my social life, insisting that women in this family needed to stay in their proper place. I felt trapped. I wanted to love his family, but it seemed impossible when every gesture came with an invisible barbed wire of judgment. And yet, I stayed. I wanted to believe Dylan's parents could warm up to me. I thought that maybe if I showed patience, respect, and understanding, things could change. But deep down, a knot of dread was forming in my stomach, and I couldn't shake the feeling that a bigger storm was coming, one I wasn't sure I'd survive without breaking down. Things started to escalate quickly after that engagement party. It wasn't just the public digs anymore. Linda's comments began creeping into our private lives. She would call Dylan multiple times a day, ostensibly checking in, but the conversation would always turn into subtle jabs at me. One afternoon, I overheard her say, "I just don't understand why Dylan would settle for someone like her. She may be nice enough, but she'll never really fit into our world." I felt a chill run down my spine. How could someone say such things about their own child's partner? Dylan was furious when he told me, but the frustration in his voice wasn't enough to erase the knot forming in my stomach. He tried setting boundaries, telling her he didn't want to discuss me or our life at every single phone call. She would agree for a few days, then slip right back into the same patterns. The first really shocking incident happened during a family Thanksgiving. I had spent the entire day cooking and helping with preparations, genuinely trying to make an effort. Everything was going smoothly until dessert. Linda decided it was time for a little family game, gathering everyone around the table. At first, I thought it was harmless. Then she started making pointed remarks under the guise of humor. "Oh, look at her pumpkin pie. How cute. I guess middle-class girls can manage this without burning the kitchen down." Laughter erupted from a few distant relatives who clearly didn't know me well, but I could see the discomfort in Dylan's eyes. I tried to laugh it off, but I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I wanted to scream, to tell her off in front of everyone, but I held back because Dylan gave me a warning look. "Not here. Don't give her the satisfaction." That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep, replaying every comment, every laugh, every pointed glance. It wasn't just a joke, it was a methodical attempt to make me feel like I didn't belong. A week later, things reached another level. She invited herself to help me with a work-related project, one I had planned to complete on my own. She arrived, critiquing my ideas, questioning every detail. At first, I tried to stay polite, even asking for her advice, but it quickly became unbearable. She mocked my presentations, corrected my grammar, and when Dylan walked in, she turned to him and said, "See, I'm just trying to teach her how things are done properly. Someone has to show her." Dylan was red-faced, muttering, "Mom, stop," but she brushed him off with a smirk. It was in that moment I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself before. This wasn't just irritation or awkward family dynamics. This was manipulation. She wasn't trying to help. She was trying to dominate, to humiliate, and to force Dylan into defending her at my expense. I went to Dylan later that evening, exhausted and on the verge of tears. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered. "I feel like I'm losing myself, like I'm constantly under attack in my own life." Dylan held my hand and squeezed it. "I know, and I'm so sorry," he said. "I'll handle this. We'll figure it out together." But deep down, I knew the real storm was still coming, and this time, it wouldn't be subtle. The next major blow came during Dylan's older brother's wedding. I had been dreading it for months, knowing Linda would be there, and I was right to worry. From the moment we arrived at the venue in suburban Boston, her presence was suffocating. She floated around the room, an overly sweet smile plastered on her face, but I could feel her eyes drilling into me every few seconds. At the rehearsal dinner, she began subtly undermining me in front of Dylan's extended family. "Oh, you did such a cute job with the seating charts," she said, glancing at me, "for someone who's never really had experience organizing big events." A few cousins chuckled awkwardly, and I felt my stomach twist. Dylan tried to steer the conversation away, but she deliberately ignored him. Every comment she made was a calculated jab, a reminder that she didn't think I belonged. During the reception, it got worse. As I danced with Dylan's younger cousins, she approached him, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. "You really should control her. She's getting too wild." I stopped mid-step, frozen with disbelief. Dylan, looking shocked, whispered, "Ignore her, please." But how could I ignore someone publicly claiming I was out of control in my own life? Then came the toast. Linda grabbed the microphone and cleared her throat. Everyone turned to her, smiling politely, expecting the usual family congratulations. Instead, she raised her glass and said, "I just want to say how proud I am of my son for marrying someone who I honestly thought could give me grandchildren, but apparently even that was too much to expect." Murmurs ran through the room. My heart sank. She didn't stop there. "Yes, it's shocking. I mean, she's nice enough, but she's clearly not capable of fulfilling her duties. I always hoped Dylan would choose someone strong and proper, but alas." The entire room went silent. I felt my face heat up and tears pricked my eyes. I couldn't breathe. Dylan finally stepped in, taking the microphone and confronting her, his voice shaking with anger. "Mom, that's enough. You can't talk to her like this. She's my wife, and I won't let you disrespect her." Linda smirked, completely unbothered, and muttered something under her breath. But Dylan grabbed my hand and led me out to a quieter corner. I was shaking, sobbing, and utterly humiliated, not just by her words, but by the fact that no one in the room had dared challenge her until Dylan did. Later, when we returned to our hotel room, I collapsed on the bed. Dylan sat beside me, holding me tight. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I've tried so many times to stop her, but this is on another level. I hate that you had to go through that." I sobbed into his chest, feeling a mixture of anger, shame, and relief that Dylan was finally standing up so firmly. That night, I realized something important. I couldn't continue letting her actions dictate my happiness.
I couldn't avoid events, hide, or pretend it didn't affect me. Something had to change, and soon. Because if I didn't take a stand, I knew she would keep testing boundaries, and one day, the damage might be permanent. It happened sooner than I expected. Dylan's mother, Linda, had invited herself to what was supposed to be a quiet weekend at our apartment, claiming she wanted to help organize our finances. I knew better. This was her way of inserting herself into our lives, undermining me again. The tension began the moment she stepped through the door. She immediately critiqued everything: the furniture arrangement, the way I'd folded towels, even the spices I kept in my pantry. "Oh, honey," she said, with that sickly sweet smile, "I think you're doing this all wrong. Dylan, don't you think she should listen to me?" I felt my chest tighten. I had reached my limit. "Linda," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "this is our home. You're not helping. You're criticizing everything I do, and it's not okay." Her face fell into an exaggerated frown. "Excuse me? I'm just trying to guide your life, dear. Someone has to make sure Dylan doesn't suffer." Dylan stepped in, his voice firm for the first time that day. "Mom, enough. She's my wife, and she makes decisions in this house. You are not welcome to treat her or me like this. If you can't respect that, you're leaving." Linda's jaw dropped, and for a second, I actually thought she might finally back down. But then, in classic form, she started screaming about how ungrateful we were, how we were trying to drive a wedge between her and her son, and how she'd never let this stand. Dylan's face turned red, but he didn't budge. "Mom," he said, taking a deep breath, "you've crossed every boundary we've tried to set for years. This is your last warning. Leave now, or I will call the police. You are not welcome in our home until you can behave like a normal adult." The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of shock, fury, and disbelief. She packed a few things in silence, still muttering insults under her breath, and stormed out. The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. After she left, Dylan and I sat down and just breathed. "I'm sorry it took me so long to stand up properly," he said. "I've always defended you, but I needed to be this firm." I buried my face in his chest and let the tears flow. I was angry, yes, but also deeply grateful. For the first time, I felt like we had reclaimed our home, our space, and our peace of mind. That night, we made a plan. Linda's intrusion wouldn't happen again. We blocked her from contacting us directly, and Dylan told his father everything that had been going on behind the scenes. His dad, who had been quietly observing the tension for years, finally expressed his support. "You did the right thing," he said. "She's the one causing chaos, not you. Stand your ground." For the first time, I felt hope. For years, I thought this battle with a toxic mother-in-law might never end. But seeing Dylan stand by me so firmly gave me strength. I realized that boundaries weren't just necessary, they were essential. And with him on my side, maybe, just maybe, we could finally have a life without constant manipulation and humiliation. The following months were tense, but gradually, we began reclaiming our lives. Linda still tried to insert herself in subtle ways, sending gifts, calling to check in, but Dylan and I had set clear boundaries. He refused to pick up her calls unless it was important, and I didn't respond to her texts. For the first time, I felt like we were in control of our own lives.
The real test came during Dylan's father's 50th birthday party. I had been nervous for weeks. I wanted to attend, for Dylan's sake, but the thought of seeing Linda again made my stomach churn. On the day of the event, I braced myself. Linda showed up, of course, but when she realized Dylan and I would not engage with her manipulations, she seemed lost. She made a few half-hearted comments about the decorations, but Dylan immediately intervened, steering the conversation elsewhere. To my surprise, other family members began noticing. Cousins, aunts, and uncles quietly offered support. One cousin even whispered, "It's about time someone put her in her place." That small acknowledgement made a huge difference. I realized I wasn't alone in feeling the frustration, embarrassment, and anxiety she had caused over the years. By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't in years: relief. Linda's attempts to dominate the evening had failed. Dylan and I laughed together, danced together, and actually enjoyed the celebration. It was a turning point for me, proof that we could enforce boundaries without guilt and still maintain relationships with those who truly cared about us. Afterward, Dylan's father pulled me aside. "I want you to know I see everything she's done," he said quietly, "and I support you completely. You're part of this family, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong." My chest tightened with gratitude. It wasn't just Dylan's support I needed. It was recognition from the rest of the family that I belonged. A few weeks later, Linda attempted one last confrontation via text, trying to manipulate Dylan into allowing her back into our home. He forwarded the messages to me, and we laughed, together this time. No tears, no shame, no fear. Just a shared understanding that her attempts no longer had power over us. It wasn't easy. It took years to navigate the toxic behavior, but standing firm and having Dylan by my side changed everything. I learned that boundaries are a form of self-respect, and that true love means defending one another, even when it's uncomfortable or confrontational. For the first time, I felt free, not just from Linda's manipulations, but from the anxiety and guilt I had carried for so long. We could finally live our lives on our own terms, together, without constant interference. And that, more than anything, felt like victory. A few months later, Dylan's mother finally seemed to realize her control was gone. She stopped calling, stopped sending messages, and largely disappeared from our lives. When she did reach out, Dylan calmly reminded her of our boundaries. No yelling, no insults, no visits without respect. The relief was immediate. Our home, once filled with tension and dread, felt peaceful for the first time. I could enjoy time with Dylan, host friends, and focus on work without constantly worrying about her interference. Even family gatherings became manageable as everyone understood the rules we had set. I reflected on everything we had been through. I had learned to stand up for myself, to demand respect, and to trust Dylan to protect our shared life. I realized that toxic behavior, no matter how persistent, loses power when confronted with clear boundaries and consistent action. Dylan and I grew stronger as a couple. We laughed more freely, supported each other without hesitation, and no longer carried the emotional weight of someone else's cruelty. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Looking back, I understood the lesson clearly. Toxic people may try to control your life, but with courage, honesty, and support, it's possible to reclaim your happiness, and finally, peace becomes your own. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.